Welcome back to another edition of the Field of 68 Mid-Major Top 25 Poll. I am Sean Paul, joined by Jeff Goodman. Jeff, thanks for coming on this week. He is indeed a voter in the poll. So
thanks for having me. Appreciate it, Sean, and happy holidays, first of all.
Yeah, you too, and to everybody out there. Hope everyone had a good Christmas, if you indeed celebrate Christmas. But now getting into the storylines of the week. Jeff, what are your two storylines of the week?
I mean, the first one's got to be the pauses at this point and just the concern going forward with not just mid-major, but all of college basketball right now. You know, I'm trying to track these games, what happens, what doesn't. I just feel like you're going to see, you know, half the games right now for the foreseeable future be scrapped. And, you know, teams have different rules. Some are testing the entire team when they get back from Christmas break. Some are not. So I think, again, it's just going to be a crapshoot right now. And a lot of teams I'm talking to are saying, you know, we're kind of happy. We had our whole team get hit already. So we're good with that now going forward, because hopefully they can't get this new strain again. And, you know, other people are saying maybe we can get it again. So there's just so much uncertainty right now with college basketball. And I think the biggest thing, there's no leadership. No.
Yeah. And I mean, you look at what's happened this year. It feels like it's a lot worse than it was last year, just based on how quick it came. Because you look early in the season, there really wasn't that many pauses the first 3 weeks of the year, but it's all come just one after another right now. And it's like, we can talk about certain games, but who knows if they're going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, listen, the number one team in your poll, Loyola Chicago, has been on pause, and we don't know what they're going to look like when they come back. The good thing is, you know, unlike a year ago when kids got hit with COVID, they got hit harder, right? I mean, I feel like the symptoms were a lot worse. They were put in isolation. Some couldn't do anything, had to stay in their apartment, couldn't even go out for walks or runs, or, you know, others could go down and maybe shoot by themselves. But this time I feel like it's a lot different, where even if you test positive, but you don't have symptoms, you can still stay in shape. So you come off the pause a lot better than you did a year ago.
Mm-hmm. So that's the biggest storyline in all of sports right now. But what's your number two storyline for the mid-major week?
I think for me, it's Speedy Claxton and the Hofstra Pride. I mean, they're rolling now, right? Like, they beat Arkansas 2 weeks ago. They take down Monmouth this past week. That's a pretty good run. And I was at Hofstra in the preseason. I went. My daughter visited. Spent some time with Speedy and their assistant Colin Curtin, and I'm surprised how good they've been. But again, he's got some good players there, veterans. Obviously, Jalen Ray's been terrific lately. And I think, again, when you can beat Arkansas and Monmouth, that's one of the better high majors. Listen, I'm not as high in Arkansas as some people were or are right now. I think their resume is absolutely pitiful, you know, in terms of who they've played for, who they should be playing. For the job security that Eric Musselman has, it's a joke who they played. But again, it's still Arkansas, a team that went to the Elite Eight last year. Monmouth, one of the better mid-majors. So I think Hofstra right now, they got to be ranked in your poll, and I think they are, right?
Oh, yeah, they're ranked. They've risen a little bit. They were unranked 2 weeks ago, but they've really just jumped up the rankings because of what they've been able to do. You look at their loss earlier in the season. They should have beat Maryland. They had that game, but they lost it. And then they took Houston, a healthy Houston team, to overtime in the opening game of the season. So even though they've lost some games, those are losses you're like, okay, you know, they weren't supposed to win those games, but they competed. And when you're a mid-major team going on the road like that to a tough, hostile environment, I feel like that's all you can really ask for.
Yeah, Aaron Estrada has been good for Hofstra too. Like, they put together a good team with a combination of some transfers and some guys that they've kind of homegrown and done a good job kind of letting them grow up and get older.
My two storylines, I'm going to go with two player storylines. Antoine Davis, the Detroit Mercy guard, is 36 points away from breaking the all-time Detroit Mercy scoring record. He can do that in one game. We've seen it before. He's done it plenty of times throughout his illustrious career. They play Youngstown State, scheduled to play Youngstown State on the 30th, and then they're scheduled to play Robert Morris on New Year's Day. So as long as those games go as scheduled, he'll break it this week, more than likely, and maybe he does it against Youngstown State. But there's no question he's been one of the best players in college basketball throughout the last 4 years, right?
John, he's going to go down as the greatest player ever to play at the University of Detroit, maybe. You know, certainly right there. And it's cool because, again, when I remember he committed to Mike Davis when he was at Texas Southern, I believe, coaching, and then he brought him to Detroit with him, and nobody really knew how good he was. He's diminutive. I mean, he is small, but he can really score, and Mike Davis gives him plenty of leeway to shoot the basketball, doesn't he?
Yeah, I mean, just any given night, like if you're watching a Detroit Mercy game, he's probably going to get 15 to 20 shots up, but he could drop 40 on any given night. Like that's just the attention defenses have to pay to him is a lot because of how dangerous he is scoring the ball inside and out. Just a really versatile offensive player. And another versatile offensive player, Darius Mcgee, another small guy. He's only 5'9", scored 82 points at the Diamond Head Classic. Look, Liberty went 1-2 in the Diamond Head Classic, but that might be the most impressive 1-2 stretch I've ever seen because they competed hard with Stanford. Stanford almost let them back in the game, just letting Darius Mcgee drive the basket repeatedly near the end of the game. And BYU, Liberty competed with them the entire game. They could have won that one. Liberty started off the season a little rough, but Keegan McDowell starting to get it going as a second option. Liberty did lose a lot aside from McGee, but he's taken a big step up. His usage rate is like 10% higher than it was last year. He's just doing a lot more this year. And there's very few pure scorers in the country better than Darius Mcgee.
Yeah, no, he's been terrific, and Richie McKay has done a good job. Kind of, I remember he had a veteran team 2 years ago that we thought when all those guys left, it might take a step down. But the one thing Liberty has that nobody else in their league has, this. They got this. I mean, they got more resources and support
That's
than
always
anybody in
the
their
most
league.
thing too. Yeah, exactly. And
that helps.
Yeah, they're probably not going to be like a 12 seed this year, maybe not even a 13 because of some of their early season losses. But if you're a 3 seed and you're matching up with 14 seeded Liberty, I mean, that's not a matchup you're excited for. I'll tell you that. I mean, that's a rough matchup for you.
Who's the team that you do not want to see in your poll? Not necessarily the number one team, Loyola Chicago, but who's the team that you just would not want to see come NCAA tournament team? For me, honestly, it might be UAB. Might be Andy Kennedy and UAB just because of how they play.
I think that's definitely one of them because they're deep. They play tough defense. They're an improved offensive team. And obviously, Andy Kennedy's a really good coach. But, I mean, let's get into the poll. I'll say Murray State, who's a number 7 team this week, they drop a little bit. They were one of the few movers this week. They lost to Auburn, but they've shown they can win on the road at Memphis. Tevin Brown has really emerged as one of the best players in all of mid-major basketball. He's been a big-time player. He was on that John Morant team from a few years ago. That'd be my team. I would say Murray State because they're deep. Really? They're well-coached. Trey Hannibal's been a great addition. Yeah, they can shoot the ball. Juice Hill's been really good. Trey Hannibal, the addition from South Carolina, has been really good on the defensive end. KJ Williams hasn't got it going the way he did last year, but I think he'll get it going over time. They're experienced, well-coached. They can shoot the ball. They defend. Murray State is not a team I'd want to face in the NCAA tournament at all.
But, yeah, I'm with you. Ohio's another one. Everybody thought they would drop off, greatly with the loss of Jason Preston, but Mark Spears, who we'll probably talk about here in a little bit, has been absolutely phenomenal. And they've got some guys who could space a court. Vanderplas has been terrific again. Jeff Bowles has just done a really good job. When you lose a guy that almost, I can't remember if he went first round or right. Clippers took him early second.
Yeah, I think he was the first pick of the second round.
Right. They took him right away. When you lose a guy like that at Ohio, you expect you're going to have a huge drop off. And instead, they look like a team that can win their league again and maybe win a game in the NCAA tournament.
And you get Jason Carter coming back from Xavier after a few years there.
He's his 8th year? What's he in his 8th year now?
Might be his 10th. I'm not sure. I think
feels like it.
Yeah. But getting into, I talked about Murray State a moment ago. Between Murray State and Belmont, where do you sit on that race? Because it's clear they're the top 2 teams in the OVC. The OVC is not very good. I mean, that's just what it is. They are probably one of the worst top to bottom leagues in the country just because of how rough the bottom is. But Morehead State's solid at 3. What's your thoughts on Murray State versus Belmont?
It's a tough one. I mean, like you said, the bottom of the league is holding them down. But I think both of them, that should be a war this year for those two. And I hope they end up getting all their games in against each other because those are the ones that you're going to look forward to in the OVC this year. But, Belmont's got those guys, Nick Masinski, who can really, really play down low, veteran. Murphy, they've got veterans. They've got guys who've been there for a while. And like you said, with Murray, they might have the best. I don't know who the best player in the league is, but I would probably go right now. I think you got to go with Tevin Brown.
Mm-hmm. And then with Belmont, you had Will Richard, the freshman, very impressive, averaging double-figure points per game. They have a lot of options on the floor. Casey Alexander is doing a great job. And, another coach is doing a great job, Samford. Coach Bucky McMillan joins me on the show right now. We'll get to that. Here's my interview with Samford head coach Bucky McMillan. Coach, so you guys come off a big win last week on the road over Ole Miss. What does that win mean for the program, winning against a really tough Ole Miss squad on the road?
Well, it's good for a lot of reasons. It's good we won another close game. If you kind of kept up with our team, we've been about 6 or 7 of those that could have gone either way, and we kind of come out on top on all of them. Ole Miss is well coached, really good defensive team. I think, we'll win a lot of home games this year in the SEC. So quality opponent, so that's always good. It was good to see, like I said, our guys in those games, we were who we were. We were aggressive and we're us. And for a young team, that's really good to see because, we got a team comprised of mainly all freshmen and sophomore. So I think you've seen our team get a lot better over the course of the year from when they got there in June. And you go to the San Francisco game, we've gotten so much better from San Francisco to now. And that's just what we want to keep doing, as the season goes on, is just keep improving. And you know how it is in the mid-major level, it's about how you're playing in that conference tournament. So I want to keep working towards that.
2 years ago, you were coaching high school basketball at Mount Brook High School. What's been the biggest difference between coaching high school basketball for as long as you did to coaching at the Division I level as a first-time head coach at the college level?
Well, it's funny. I played college basketball. I played at a school that was in the Big South Conference, and I think some things have just changed over time in college basketball. I think one of the biggest things that you see is, when I came through, we played a lot of pickup. That's kind of how we grew up. We grew up playing pickup. There was not all these skill trainers. I mean, you worked out with somebody or a coach every now and then, but, it was usually you by yourself in the gym if you were working out or you're playing pickup. And if you kind of went to the gym and you saw someone in there, you'd be like, man, let's play one-on-one. You saw 3 guys, let's play 2-on-2. And so, that doesn't really happen at all anymore. It's like looked down upon to play pickup. But so when I came through, I think the players probably knew how to win a little bit more, just being real. I think because if you lose in pickup, there may be a list of 30 people and you're sitting out for an hour and a half. So you learn who to pass the ball to. You learn how to be a competitor. Now with all the skill training, I think the players are more skilled, but getting that competitive edge is something that has to be coached into the players now. I was fortunate enough in high school where I had a program where I was working with kids from 2nd grade up. So we kind of got that, worked out at an early age. But so to answer your question, going a long way, is basically how has college basketball kind of changed since I was in as a player. And I think it's more skilled, but not necessarily the players aren't as great a competitors. So we spend a lot of time making our players understand winning and losing in practice,
Quest Glover, the transfer from Florida, has been a big-time player for you guys, one of the most impactful transfers in the country, averaging 19 a game, 4 assists. What was that whole process like, recruiting him, and what was the pitch to get him to come to Samford?
What's funny, my high school team played against his high school team when he was in Bearden. So they won the state championship. I coached at Mountain Brook in Alabama, and we won the state championship in our league, and we played them. They had Drew Pember, who was at Tennessee. Now he's at UNC Asheville. They had I think his name Trent Stepney, who's at Asheville. We had Trenton Watford, who went to LSU, and Colby Jones, who's at Xavier. So we played them in a great game in Tennessee, and we blocked Quest, shot at the buzzer 1-1. So I knew him from back then. He knew who I was, and it was just kind of about letting him play his game. I think more than anything, players want to know that if they go somewhere, they don't have to necessarily change their game completely for that team. And the way he plays and his aggressiveness, and we like to play wide open, we knew that he'd be able to play his game, and he thought coming here he would flourish because of that. So it's mainly just about style of play fit and having a previous relationship in a way.
So another thing with transfers is you guys have 4 highly impactful Division I transfer portal transfers. What would you say the transfer portal, what kind of impact do you think it has on the mid-major level?
Well, I thought last year was the best time to get transfers because you can get them and they get a year back, right? So it was a really good time for us because, Quez is officially a sophomore for us, and so I think what you're looking at is this. I think that taking the right transfers can really help the mid-major level if you get them at a young age, right? If you can get them as freshmen, sophomores particularly, because, the rule is, you transfer once, but if you transfer again, you got to sit out. Mm-hmm. So a lot of these players that we have, the first time they see adversity, it's tough to say, I'm out of here and go sit out a year. You know what I'm saying? So I personally think that if it's done right, it can flip any program, pretty quickly. So I thought last year the COVID virus absolutely killed us. Like our program was, we were playing 5 and 6 scholarship players by the end of it. But because they put the rule in that you can get a year back, it's allowed us to really load up this year with a young group that should be pretty good for several years to come.
And you mentioned you coached Trendon Watford in high school. You guys have a very highly touted prospect on your team with Wesley Carter. Is he one of the most, where would you say he ranks among most impressive, just physical athletes that you've coached in your career?
Yeah, he's a great athlete. Very, you look at him, some of the things he can do for his size, it's phenomenal. I've told him before the year started, man, you're going to have games as a freshman where you feel like you're one of the best players to ever play this game, and then you're going to have days where you don't even know if you feel like you can play basketball. To Alabama State, he had 27 points. He's had some games and played that well, but very athletic. But what makes his future very promising is he wants to be coached. Like he really wants to be coached, and very disciplined. Does the small things. He in the gym all the time. So specimen who wants to get better. That's a good combination.
You guys have a big time road game coming up this week against Furman. They've been one of the best teams in the Southern Conference over the past number of years under Bob Ritchie. What's the preparation for a game like that?
We don't change too much. We're still about, whether we win this game or lose this game, it's not necessarily the deal breaker how to get in the NCAA tournament. We just got to keep getting better at things we do. You know what I'm saying? Because we want to get to the conference tournament, and if we line up against Furman, we feel like we're going to play our best game in that game. So obviously they're very well coached, good team. We've had some, the virus has not been easy on anybody here, so you always hold your breath to see who's going to be playing in the game, on both sides. But we don't overthink it, man. We really don't. We really spend the bulk of our time. There was a difference between us and I would say the majority of the team in college basketball. We spend the majority of the time working on us, watching film of us, and talking about the things that we got to do to get better. Yeah, there's some things we'll do game plan wise, but it's really not that. We just really want to make our team feel like when we get to the end of the year, man, that we are playing great basketball. And I don't think you can do that if you're so consumed with every team you're playing. And, if you're like, well, for this game, we should probably put in this defense or this offense or this to win this game. That may be true, but then you never get great at that stuff that you've been working on since day one. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And so to answer your question would be this: we need to come in there just with the right mindset above all else, that we can win the game, that we can play in that game, and we should be in that game.
I would like to thank my guest, Samford head coach Bucky McMillan, for coming on the show, and we'll get right back to the Field of 68 mid-major show after this. Thanks again to Samford head coach Bucky McMillan for joining the show. Samford is 10 wins. They play Furman, as we talked about, this week, so that should be a pretty good game coming up, a big win against Ole Miss last week. Now, we'll get –
Can I give you a quick nugget on Bucky McMillan before we move on?
Let's do it.
You got to check out his background. I don't know if you checked into it at all, his gambling background. Big time.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, big time gambler. I want to write that story at some point when he wins a little bit more. We've talked about this, and I don't think he wants to really talk too much about it yet. But once he starts to win, I'm going to beat you on that story. I'm going to write that story first on Bucky Ball.
Hey, that'd be good to read. Definitely pay attention to whenever Jeff writes that story, because that sounds really interesting to me. I didn't know that about Bucky, but it was a great interview. Good team there. Quest Glover, Wesley Carter, good squad over at Furman. But now we get into our mid-major All-American team midway through the year. We did one with Kevin Sweeney, Rob Doster, and myself on opening night of the season. But now we're a couple months into the season. Let's get into
how many did you have? How many do you have on that list that are on our? We agree. The craziest part, John, is we did them separately. Mm-hmm. And we legitimately came up with the same. I don't know if that's good or bad that you have the same names as me, because you follow mid-major more than I do these days. But I feel good. I feel good that I didn't screw up, that I have the same 5 as you, that I had a couple others that were on the periphery, on the verge, but we had the same 5 guys for our mid-major All-American team.
I'll tell you this, Patrick Baldwin Jr. was on the list. He's not on the list now. I mean, he hasn't been great, but part of it is just the defenses are just paying so much attention to him, not enough scoring around him. And he's going to be a lottery pick probably no matter what, but he just hasn't been great. Milwaukee's not great. So he's not on the list this time. The only player that's a holdover from the first list is Kenneth Lofton Jr., who's been a big time player at that 5 spot for Louisiana Tech, 18 points per game, 10 rebounds per game, was very impressive for the FIBA U18 or U19 team for the United States, was probably the best player on the team and should have won the MVP. Chet Holmgren ended up winning, but Kenneth Lofton Jr. has been a big-time player. Who do you have on the list next?
I mean, you got to have Jamal Kane, don't you? To me, that's a guy that you got to have on. He's been terrific for an Oakland team that has surprised, right? I mean, I don't think anybody knew the Grizz were going to be this good. Maybe Greg Campy.
Horizon League Bowl preseason.
Yeah. What were they?
Sixth.
I mean, maybe Greg Campy knew what he had in Kane, but he's had a sensational season. One of those guys that, the transfer ups, and I'm going to do something on this in the next week or two. Generally, you cut their numbers in half. For the guys that go low or mid to high, you're going to cut their numbers in half. I'm curious to know what the guys that went high to mid or low, like Jamal Kane, has been as good as just about anybody in that transfer portal last year.
There's a lot of examples of that too. You look at Kane, you look at Kobe McEwen, you look at Quest Glover, Drew Pember at UNC Asheville. There's a ton of examples of high major transfers going down that shows that mid-major teams can really benefit from the transfer portal. There's going to be some give and take because you're going to lose some guys, but at the end of the day, there's only 13 scholarship spots on each team. So someone from the high major level is going to have to go down in response to that usually. So
no doubt. Who else we got on this list?
Malachi Smith, another transfer. He began his career at Wright State, came over. Now he's averaging 20 points per game, 6 rebounds per game, and 3 assists for Chattanooga. They look like the best team in the SoCon. The battle between Tevin Brown and Malachi Smith earlier in the season was must-watch television. Malachi Smith is one of the best guards in America.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And that's a guy that I think hasn't gotten as much pub as he probably should so far. But, Chattanooga's been really good. And that's one thing both you and I think started with, right? We started with really good players on really good teams. And that's my take. Like Patrick Baldwin, you can put up 25 and 10, but if you're not winning, you're not deserving of being on some sort of All-American team. You've got to start with winning. Mm-hmm. And that's where Malachi Smith's done really a tremendous job so far. We talked about Tevin Brown. He just does everything for Murray. He was a guy that, again, as a freshman was just kind of a piece, mm-hmm. right? Like you didn't know what he was going to be when John was there, but he's turned into a really good player who can score. He rebounds well for his position. He can make people better. He shoots the shit out of it. Everything. I mean, Tevin Brown's one of the better all-around players in the country right now.
He could play anywhere he wanted to in the country too. Like he could have transferred to Kentucky probably if he wanted to. That's how good he is. And he's a pro. He's going to play at the next level. I don't know if it's going to be right away, but if he's logging some NBA minutes in the next 3 years, don't be surprised because he is a very good player. And then the final player on the list, his numbers might not be as high as some of the others on the list, but it's Jamari Boulier from San Francisco. He's just a great leader and a great player, 17 points per game, 5 rebounds per game, and 4 assists per game for the number 2 ranked team in our poll, San Francisco. Todd Golden has a team that looks very capable of making the NCAA tournament. What do you think of Boulier's rise from 2 points per game as a freshman to, being one of the better guards in the country?
Yeah, I saw him in person last year when they beat Virginia in the bubble, and he was good, but he's taken another step this year, clearly. And,
without a doubt.
You know, he doesn't necessarily look the part. Neither one of their guards looked the part. I think, one of the biggest, factors for them is they've got more up front now than they had last year with the kid from San Diego.
The
Yeah, who I love, by the way. I did a game of theirs a couple of years ago. You're not going to find a more endearing kid to talk to. He is so much fun. I'm glad he's doing well. He actually just sent me a Merry Christmas text the other day. Great kid, and I'm glad he's really flourishing with the Dons. But Boulier, he definitely deserves to be on this list. I mean, again, tough, hard-nosed, scores it, makes people better, and just wins. And that's one of the biggest things that they've been able to do there under Todd Golden.
Now getting into our game of the week, we'll, preface this by saying they might happen, they might not happen. We don't know, right? As of right now, as we're recording, they're scheduled to happen. But what's your game of the week that might happen?
I think I'm going with the San Fran St. Mary's game on New Year's Day at 5:00. It's actually on Stadium. It's in Moraga. I would love to be there. I actually saw St. Mary's play earlier this year at Colorado State, and that's a great matchup between the two this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, that's a potential resume building win if San Francisco is able to get it, continue adding to that resume, and then they get Gonzaga after that. So they're starting off with a gauntlet of West Coast Conference opponents. But that's going to be a great game. And then another game I'm looking at this week is Western Kentucky against Louisiana Tech. That's on New Year's Day. Kenneth Lofton Jr. mentioned him earlier, but what about Jamari and Sharp? 8 points per game, 8 rebounds per game. How about over 5 blocks a game? I mean, he's just ridiculous.
Yeah, he was fun to watch. I mean, even the Kentucky game, they got blasted, but it was kind of fun early to watch him. 10 seconds into the game, he sends a shot back right away. And he's a guy that, again, you got to understand, these junior college guys, when they come over, usually it takes them a full year to get acclimated. And he's been sensational early. I know he was highly touted coming from the JUCO ranks, but you can be as highly touted as you want coming from the JUCO ranks. Most of those guys just don't get the pub that they deserve.
Oh, yeah.
So when they come in and do well, everybody's like, who is he? Who is he? And, I know who those guys are, but most people don't. And that matchup's going to be interesting because he's so long and athletic, but so thin. And obviously Lofton's a guy that he's different with that girth around him. I don't know how that's going to play out. I think I give the edge to Lofton here, but again, who knows with that length? I don't know if Lofton's ever got up against a guy quite like that.
Yeah, and Lofton loves using spin moves down low, and will he be able to get past Sharp? I mean, with Sharp's long arms, he might not be able to get some of those tough shots off.
The only good thing is Lofton probably went against Chet Holmgren plenty in the summer.
That's a good point.
So that might help him a little bit.
Yeah, that's true. And, Sharp, just a great player. I would definitely recommend watching him if you haven't. Western Kentucky's ranked in the poll. But now getting into my favorite segment of the week last week, my upset of the week did not come to fruition. Oral Roberts lost on the road against South Dakota State. Thought they could come away with that one. It was pretty close down the stretch. But Jeff, what is your upset of the week?
All right, my upset of the week, I kind of looked at it here. I got to look again. I'm going to go with Mercer beating Chattanooga on New Year's Day.
Okay.
Yeah, there are a lot of – I'm looking around. There are a lot of the top teams that are at home or playing on the road against not great teams. I think Mercer's got the talent. Greg Gary's done a good job there with transfers, and I think that's a scary game for Chattanooga on the road. They start with ETSU at home this week, and then they go to Mercer.
Yeah, Mercer can really shoot the basketball. Another high major to mid-major transfer, Felipe Haase, started his career at South Carolina, sat out a year at Mercer. Last 2 years, he's been a big-time player, good pick-and-pop big man, another example there. But here's my upset of the week, and the biggest reason is because Towson is without Cameron Holden, their second leading scorer, their leading rebounder. He's out for 4 weeks or more with a fractured jaw. So James Madison, I think, could go on the road and beat a very impressive Towson team. They've looked great this season, but not having Holden's a big-time loss. James Madison hasn't shot the ball great this year, but they have the talent. Vado Morse, Takal Molson, transferred from Seton Hall. They have a lot of pieces there, and we saw that they can beat good teams. They beat Virginia early in the season. I mean, Virginia's not great this year, but it's still Tony Bennett in Virginia. So I think that James Madison can come away with a big-time road victory here. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I do too, as long as James Madison is able to play that game. That's the big one.
We don't know, but hopefully.
You can say that about everybody, though,
Yeah.
so I don't want to limit it to JMU. This JMU thing's crazy this year, obviously, because, the league is not allowing them to play in their conference tournament because they're leaving the CAA, so.
Just ridiculous. I mean,
yeah, I get it. They're pissed off at some of the stuff that happened with JMU, but you're only hurting the kids here.
Yeah, it's not their fault. They didn't make the decision.
Exactly. Let them play. So this is fun, man. This is fun. I'm glad you've done this mid-major poll every week in the show. I hope you've had fun with it because you're killing it.
Thank you.
You're killing it now and getting great guests on. And for anybody, you got to watch this. The best mid-major poll you're going to find anywhere. I'm one of the voters. I'm probably the worst voter of the 11 you have or 12 you have, but it's a blast. It's a blast watching you. I know how hard you work. I know how much better you continue to get, Sean, and just keep having fun with it, man.
Yeah, thanks to Jeff Goodman for coming on. Definitely appreciate all the kind words there. And, none of this would be possible without Jeff and Rob Dosser giving me the chance to be on the field of 68. So definitely appreciative of every time I'm able to come on and do this poll. Thanks everybody for watching. And until next week, have a good one.